This is the second lecture of Unit 5 on motivation, emotion, and stress. We are going to continue talking about motivation today, starting with social motivation. Most of our motivation as humans comes from social situations. A large part of our life is spent trying to figure out who we would like to affiliate ourselves with. What types of people are we similar to or not similar to? And we spend a large part of our life trying to build relationships, maintain those relationships, and then figure out what to do when those relationships fail. So who you affiliate with really says a lot about you as a person. And as you're doing your motivation project, I want you to think about what motivates you to affiliate, to associate yourself with the people, the friends that you do. Another type of social motivation is just achievement in general. Achievement can be broken down into many different levels. You've got academic achievement, so wanting to do well academically in school. Athletic achievement is something completely different, but it's still very important to some people. Social achievement, dealing with that affiliation that we were just talking about. And then personal achievement. Maybe you are motivated to become independent from your parents one day, or to achieve a sense of autonomy, of standing up on your own 2 feet. So as you're doing your project, think about the different levels of achievement and why you are motivated to achieve things academically, or why you might be more motivated to achieve things athletically or socially. Now, the last thing with social motivation is the frustration-aggression principle, which we have all fallen victim to at some point in time. This principle says that aggression is the result of blocking a person's effort to obtain a goal. So you have a goal. You are driven to achieve your goal. You are motivated to achieve your goal. But then something might stand in your way, an obstacle that blocks you from achieving that goal. That obstacle is going to make you very frustrated, and that frustration can lead to aggression. Now, aggression can have one of 2 routes. The aggression can hinder you, it can punish you, and that's going to get you even more frustrated, and it's going to stand in the way of you achieving your goal. Or aggression can motivate you even more, it can drive you even more, and it makes you successful. So think about something in your life that you have fallen victim to the frustration aggression principle on. Has that frustration led to aggression that hindered you from achieving your goal, or has that aggression helped you to achieve your goal? So those are the 3 types of social motivation. As far as extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation, most of you probably think that you are motivated extrinsically, meaning you are more willing to be motivated to do something if you're going to achieve an award or reward. So if your parents say, I will give you $100 if you make straight A's on your first 9 weeks report card, that money for your grades is extrinsic motivation. Giving a dog a treat for sitting or for going on a walk, that is extrinsic motivation. They want that reward, so they sit or they go on the walk. Intrinsic motivation is just being motivated and doing things for the inherent joy of it. You want to help your friends study for their math test, not because you're going to get paid or not because they're going to like you more, but because you really care about your friend's grade in math. So extrinsic versus intrinsic. Believe it or not, studies have shown that intrinsic motivation is more pleasantful for people. We all like rewards, but when we do things out of the good of doing them, we tend to be more happy. Now, we're going to spend the rest of this lecture talking about the motivation and drive for hunger and sex. Starting with hunger. There's a definite biological component to hunger. When our stomachs contract, we feel pangs. We feel those hunger pangs that send signals to our brain, making us aware of our hunger. But hunger isn't just biological. They have found that when they removed the rats' stomachs and connected the esophagus to the small intestines, that the rats still felt hungry, which shows us that even though hunger is partly biological, it is something else. There is something else going on. We have found through research that there's a part of the brain, the hypothalamus, which remember is responsible for the 4 F's, feeding, fighting, fleeing, and sex. And specifically within the hypothalamus, there is one area, the ventromedial hypothalamus, that depresses hunger. They found that when they lesioned or destroyed the ventromedial hypothalamus in rats, that the animals continued to eat excessively to the point of obesity, as you see here. However, if the ventromedial hypothalamus is electrically stimulated, the rats would not eat at all. So we know again that that hunger is partly biological, but it's also psychological. Remember, that's the whole point of this course. Everything that is psychological is simultaneously biological and vice versa. Environmental cues can trigger biological responses. So if you smell something that smells really good, your mom is cooking dinner and you're hungry, that environmental cue, the smell, can trigger a biological response within you, and it can increase your insulin production. Insulin's produced by your pancreas. They've also found that memory plays an important role in hunger. Amnesia patients who have a hard time retaining memories would constantly accept food even if they have just eaten. So we know that there is this psychological component to food. If you think about comfort food, there's this emotional attachment to food. We have these social expectations. If someone dies, people bring over food, right? So that a large part of hunger is psychological. Psychological disorders can result from eating disorders. One is anorexia nervosa. This is when a normal weight person, usually a young woman, continuously starves themselves so that they lose weight. It is truly a feeling of these women feel as though they are overweight and they should not eat to lose weight. But as you can see in the pictures, a lot of times they're starving themselves to an unhealthy point. Starving yourself is not healthy at all. We're going to talk more about this disorder when we get to mental disorders later on in the semester. Another eating disorder is bulimia nervosa. These people tend to binge eat. They will have episodes of overeating. They usually eat very high fattening food, but it's followed by purging. They want to get rid of the calories that they just ate. So maybe they make themselves vomit or throw up. Maybe they use laxatives. Maybe they fast for a certain period of time, or even excessive exercise, trying to burn off those calories, is a form of bulimia nervosa. We'll talk more about those two later on in the semester. The last thing we need to talk about is sexual motivation. So hunger is a need, obviously. We are all motivated to eat. Sexual motivation is not necessarily a need. We won't die if we don't have sex, but it is a way to procreate. It is a way to carry our genes and our species on. But it's not just a physiological based motive. With sexual motivation, humans are influenced by our learning and our physiological readiness that allows us to be sexually motivated. Two researchers, a husband and wife team, studied the sexual response cycle. It was a very controversial study. They brought hundreds of people into their lab, watched them engaging in different sexual activities, and found that there is a sexual response cycle that humans go through. The first stage is the initial response stage. In this stage, you've got the genital areas becoming engorged with blood. A woman's vagina is going to secrete lubricant. Whereas the plateau phase, all of those things continue. Your breathing continues, your blood pressure, your pulse rate goes up. A man's penis will become fully engorged and will secrete enough fluid to allow conception to occur. The third stage is the orgasm stage, and then the fourth stage is the resolution phase. And during this phase, the male will enter the refractory period that could last just a few minutes all the way up to an entire day, in which he is incapable of another orgasm. If you think about the refractory period of a neuron, the neuron cannot fire. Men go through this after an erection or ejaculation has occurred. Women do not have that same refractory period. They are capable of multiple orgasms at many point in times. I totally forgot to warn you guys that I was going to be talking about awkward things in this lecture, and you'll probably hear me say a lot of things teachers have never said before, but that's okay. This is psychology, and we're talking about sexual motivation. The last thing I want to talk about with sexual motivation is the fact that it's not just biological, but there are psychological factors in sexual motivation. Sexual desires exist in people despite not being able to have sex. They have found that patients who have suffered spinal cord injuries and they literally do not have any feelings in their genitalia still have the desire to have sex. So there is the psychological component to sexual motivation. If you think about imagined stimuli versus external stimuli, there are certain things they have found in the research setting that makes people more motivated to engage in sex, and you're going to be reading about that over the weekend. Sexual orientation is who you prefer to engage in a relationship with, homosexual orientation or heterosexual orientation. There's a lot of myths regarding homosexuality. Homosexuality is not related to childhood trauma, parenting styles, or bad relationships in your past. There is a large part of homosexuality that is biologically influenced. They have found that there are genetic influences on sexual orientation, and that identical twins tend to share sexual orientation more so than fraternal twins, which tells us that it's a genetic component. And they have also been able to genetically manipulate the sexual attraction in fruit flies, which tells us that there's a biological component to being homosexual. They've also found that there are brain differences in homosexual and heterosexual individuals. There's a hypothalamic cell cluster that is larger in straight men than in women and gay men. So the brains of people who have different sexual orientations are different, which is really interesting. There is some thought that there's environmental components that play on sexual orientation, but for a large part, it's this interaction between all of those things. And I want you to think about that as states like North Carolina and other states across the country either legalize gay marriage or ban gay marriage. If research shows that there's a biological component to it, should our government be making laws against or for those things? Okay, that's going to do it for our motivation. Please think about these things as you're doing your motivation projects. I really expect that you guys go in depth for that project, and I will be explaining more about that project next week.